10 years ago, Denise dropped her 6-year-old daughter off at school. She never came home. No Amber Alert. No police urgency. And worse, they blamed the mother. Years passed. Denise never stopped searching. Everyone called her crazy. Then one day, while using the Google Maps, she froze. What she saw changed everything. And that's when the truth began to unravel. Welcome to Minority Struggles. If this story hits home, subscribe, and let me know where you're listening from and what time is right now. Now let's begin. Denise Walker remembered that morning in ruthless, unforgiving detail. It was hot already, even though it was barely 7:30 a.m. The sun beat down on the cracked pavement outside their apartment complex, and her daughter, Amira, was dancing around the hallway in a bright yellow sweater that didn't match the weather. Denise had tried to make her change. "It's going to be too warm, baby," she'd said, gently tugging at the hem. But Amira had insisted. "It's my lucky sweater," she said proudly. "If I wear it, you won't be late to work today." Denise smiled at the memory now, even as it shattered her chest. She was late anyway. The bus had broken down 2 stops before hers, and by the time she got Amira to the school gate, the bell had already rung. She bent down, kissed her daughter's forehead, fixed her collar, and whispered, "Be good. I love you, baby girl." Amira grinned. "I love you more." Then she turned and ran through the gate, the yellow sweater glowing like a sunflower in the morning haze. That was the last moment Denise ever saw her daughter. When Denise got back that afternoon, the school pickup area was emptying out. Cars honked, parents waved, teachers called out names. Denise stood outside the classroom, scanning for the yellow. Nothing. She waited. 10 minutes. Then 20. Her stomach started to twist. The classroom door opened, and the teacher stepped out. "Oh hey, Ms. Walker. I thought you picked her up early today." Denise frowned. "No, I just got here." A pause. Then something subtle shifted in the teacher's face. A flicker of confusion. Then discomfort. Then the first flash of panic. Another teacher was called. Then the principal. Then a janitor swore he saw Amira go toward the back parking lot during recess. Then no one saw her at all. The security cameras at the school were being repaired. No footage. Nothing to track. Nothing to hold on to. The police arrived. Denise expected urgency. She expected a citywide alert. But instead, she got a clipboard and questions that cut like razors. Was Amira known to run away? Was there tension at home? Was her father involved? Have you used any substances in the past? Do you have custody documents? Denise answered everything. Her voice cracked. Her hand shook. But it didn't matter. She watched it happen. The slow, quiet way their tone shifted from investigative to judgmental. They stopped looking outward and began looking at her. No Amber Alert was issued. The officers cited lack of evidence that an abduction occurred. Denise asked if they would have waited if Amira had been white. No one answered. The press didn't pick it up. The principal gave a soft apology, but nothing more. Denise stayed outside that school until sunset, screaming her daughter's name until her throat bled. The next morning, she went to the police again. She brought Amira's baby photos, her school folder, the yellow sweater's twin she had just washed. They told her the case had been assigned, but resources were limited. She asked what that meant. They didn't answer that either. By the 3rd day, Denise understood the truth. They weren't going to look. Not for her daughter. Not for a little black girl in a public school in Kansas City. Denise's brother, Marcus, drove down from St. Louis when he heard. He found her on the floor of her apartment, curled up with Amira's teddy bear. He stayed for 2 weeks, missing work, helping her make flyers and staple them to telephone poles. They stood in the parking lot of every grocery store for miles, handing out missing posters to people who barely stopped walking. On day 15, a local officer told her privately that the case had been pushed to low priority. No evidence of foul play. No body. No ransom. It was easier for the city to pretend Amira had just wandered off. But Denise knew better, and she remembered something, a detail that came back like glass to the eye. There had been a man outside the school several times the week before Amira vanished. He wore a navy blue suit, carried a leather briefcase. He always stood near the side lot, where the buses pulled in, talking to teachers. Denise assumed he was district staff. He once handed her a pamphlet, something about state protection programs. Said he was a retired social worker, just doing volunteer outreach. Said he'd seen too many kids in unstable homes. She didn't think about it at the time. Amira was laughing. Everything felt normal. Now it felt like the devil had shaken her hand. She went to the police with that description. They asked if she got a name. She hadn't. They shrugged. She posted it on her Facebook. No one responded. She described him to the school staff. A few nodded vaguely. No one had a last name. Eventually, Denise stopped trying to speak to institutions. They had made it clear they wouldn't help. She worked night jobs, cleaned hospital floors, saved every spare dollar to keep printing flyers. On her lunch breaks, she mapped out every city where the man might have gone. And every year, on Amira's birthday, she bought a new yellow sweater, folded it, put it on the bed, pretended Amira was just out playing, and would be back to try it on. The world moved on. Denise did not. Her daughter was out there, somewhere, and someone, maybe the man in the Navy suit, knew exactly where. The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was the pretending. For the first year after Amira vanished, Denise Walker lived in motion. Not life. Motion. A mechanical series of tasks she performed with brutal precision. Wake up. Shower. Go to work. Post flyers. Call detectives. Cry in her car. Repeat. Every day felt like a copy of the day before. Grief that never softened. Just hardened. Like concrete around her ribs. People in her building stopped making eye contact. Friends who used to text her slowly stopped replying. Even her church family began whispering that maybe it was time to let go and heal. But how do you heal from something you never buried? From someone who vanished without a sound? She still had the voicemail on her phone. Amira giggling, saying, "Hi, Mommy. I love you. I finished my sandwich today, even the crust." Denise listened to it on nights when the ache became unbearable, on nights when she considered walking into traffic just to end the pause in her life. Her brother Marcus became her anchor. He called every night, made her laugh when he could, paid her rent a few times when she was too depressed to show up to work. He never told her to stop looking, never told her to move on, just stood beside her while the world pretended she was delusional. Eventually, Denise lost her job at the hospital. Too many missed shifts. Too many breakdowns in the supply closet. She picked up work cleaning motels and later a warehouse. Night jobs mostly. Places where people didn't ask questions. Places where she could cry in a mop closet and no one would care. She filled notebooks with theories. Printed maps. Tracked every missing child case within 3 states. She learned about child trafficking rings. Labor exploitation. Girls pulled into underground cleaning networks, illegal nail salons, factory backrooms. The stories weren't rare. They just weren't televised. And over time, a pattern started to form in her mind. A sick, logical web. She remembered the man at the school. The way he stood apart. Observing. Too interested in the children. Too polished. A retired social worker, he'd claimed. But something about his smile had always felt rehearsed. Like he was playing a part. She went back to the school records. No one could provide a full name. He wasn't on staff. Not officially. She contacted the Department of Family Services and asked for a list of retired caseworkers who'd done outreach in her zip code. They told her no such records were available to civilians. She filed a Freedom of Information Act request. It was denied. That year, on Amira's birthday, she baked a cake. Just like always. 6 candles. Then 7. Then 8. She sat alone, the yellow sweaters folded on the couch behind her like ghosts. She whispered her daughter's name into the icing. "I'm still here, baby." By year 5, Denise had lost almost everything. Her apartment, her job, her sense of time. She lived in Marcus's spare room and spent most of her days in libraries, scrolling through news archives and obscure blogs, looking for anything. A flicker, a clue. She started joining online forums for parents of missing children. That's where she learned the term child labor syndicate. That's where she read a post about a girl who was found scrubbing toilets in a country club under a fake name. Taken at 5, returned at 16. Her mother didn't recognize her at first. She didn't speak the same, didn't remember her own birthday. Denise read that post every night for 2 months, clung to it like scripture. Because what if that was Amira? What if her daughter wasn't gone, just hidden? She started studying labor laws, found gaps where undocumented kids could disappear, hidden in plain sight. Girls forced to work in motels, restaurants, factories, never enrolled in school, paid in scraps. It was too common, too easy to miss if no one looked. The man in the navy blue suit, she still didn't have a name. But in her gut, she believed he was part of it. A predator disguised as a professional. Someone who used his access to find kids whose parents the system didn't protect. She put his face together in her mind. The high cheekbones, the smug expression, the way he talked down to her, like he knew something she didn't. She started watching local traffic camera feeds, street view archives. She dropped pins on random neighborhoods, clicking through block after block of pixelated roads. It became a ritual. Every night between midnight and 3 a.m., she walked through digital cities, looking for yellow. People called her obsessed. Her last therapist told her she was caught in a trauma loop, that she needed medication. But Denise knew better. She wasn't stuck in the past. She was looking for the future. One night, Marcus came home and found her asleep at the kitchen table, her laptop still open. The screen glowed with a blurry image of a street corner. Two people, a man, a girl, frozen in time. "You've got to rest," he said gently, placing a blanket over her shoulders. "I can't," she murmured, eyes barely open. "Not until she's home." He didn't argue. Just sat beside her, silent. He knew better than anyone. Denise's love wasn't the kind you could reason with. It was the kind that searched, the kind that never stopped. By the 10th year, Denise barely recognized herself. Her hair had grayed early. Her knees ached from years of walking block after block, handing out flyers no one took. Her voice had softened, grown raspier, tired. But her eyes? Her eyes were still sharp, still searching, because some mothers don't get to grieve. Some mothers don't get closure. Some mothers only get the streets. And in those streets, Denise Walker was still hunting for the girl in the yellow sweater. It happened on a Tuesday night. Denise wasn't even looking for Amira that evening. Not really. She was just clicking through old streets on Google Maps, like she did when the silence in the house got too loud. She told herself she was trying to remember the name of that small grocery store Amira used to love, the one with the penny machines and the toy aisle by the door. But the truth was, Denise had been doing this for years, dropping that little yellow icon in a street after street, like it was a Ouija planchette, hoping it would land somewhere haunted. Her laptop wheezed as it loaded a street view in a suburb outside Indianapolis. Quiet, unremarkable. Trees lined the sidewalks. Cars parked neatly in driveways. Denise clicked forward, frame by frame, the camera creeping down the block like a ghost that didn't know it was dead. And then she saw it. Two figures, mid-frame, walking along the sidewalk. A man in a navy blue suit, broad-shouldered, holding a briefcase in one hand. His gait was stiff, like a man who always walked like he was on camera. Beside him walked a girl, thin, head bowed, her posture small, like she had spent years trying to disappear. She was wearing a yellow sweater. Denise leaned closer. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad, trembling. She zoomed in. The face was turned away. The image was blurry. But the sweater, it was the exact shade. That ridiculous bright yellow that Amira had insisted made her feel brave. The kind that didn't exist in most stores, that Denise had found in a clearance bin at a family thrift shop when Amira was 4. They'd patched the sleeve together after a playground rip. Denise knew that thread, that neckline, that shade like it was a part of her own skin. She stared for so long she forgot to breathe. The man's face was partially visible, thinning gray hair, clean shaven. He looked straight ahead, like nothing in the world could touch him. The girl followed just behind, her shoulders curled inward, hands in her sleeves. It hit her like a flood all at once. That was Amira. That was the man. The man from the school 10 years ago. The man in the navy suit who had said he was a retired social worker. The one no one ever followed up on. The one who vanished just days before her daughter did. Denise stood up so fast her chair tipped over. She paced the room, hands shaking. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. She wasn't crazy. She had been right all along. Amira wasn't dead. She wasn't a runaway. She had been taken. Denise snapped a screenshot. Then another. Then she dropped a pin on the map. The house they were walking past was tidy, with a red front door and a garden gnome by the mailbox. She flipped through Google's timeline. The image was dated 6 months ago. Amira was alive. Recently. Not in another country. Not underground. She was on a sidewalk. In daylight. On camera. Denise broke down sobbing. The kind of sob that didn't come from her throat but from her spine, from her gut, from every year she'd been called delusional. Every time she'd handed a flyer to someone who looked away. Every time someone at the precinct gave her that patient smile that said she was grieving wrong. She pulled herself together. Uploaded the image. Sent it to Marcus. "It's her," she typed. "I know it." He replied instantly. "I'm on my way." Then she called the police. They told her screenshots from Google Street View weren't actionable evidence. She explained the man, the matching sweater, the location, the timeline. They said the image was outdated. There was no proof the girl was Amira. That they couldn't just raid homes based on hunches. Denise hung up before she screamed. She called the FBI tip line, filed a report, uploaded the photo. No call back. The next day, she walked to the nearest news station and begged someone to hear her story. They handed her a card and told her someone would follow up. They didn't. So she found a podcast, Missing Daughters. It was run by a woman named Trina Bell, a journalist turned investigative reporter who focused on cases the media had forgotten. Denise sent her an email with the subject line, "I think I found my daughter on Google Maps." Within hours, Trina replied, "I'm listening. Tell me everything." They met in a cafe. Denise came prepared with a binder full of photos, medical records, police transcripts, and the Google image, printed in color, highlighted, circled. Trina studied it all. Quiet. Serious. After a long pause, she said, "I've seen some wild cases. But this feels real." She leaned in. "Do you know who the man is?" "I think so," Denise whispered. "I don't have his name, but I remember his face. He used to be near my daughter's school. Said he was a retired social worker. He knew things about me, my job, my daughter's routine. I think he targeted us." Trina nodded. "Give me 2 days." Denise held her breath for 48 hours. She barely slept, barely ate. Then Trina called. "I think we found him." His name was Raymond Keller, 64, former social worker, retired early, moved across 3 states over 10 years. Never married, no children, but 5 separate complaints have been filed against him between 2003 and 2010 for inappropriate conduct with families. All quietly closed. And then one more thing. 3 other girls who had gone missing in counties where he worked. None of them found. Until now. Trina's voice cracked slightly. "I think we're dealing with something bigger than your case. I think this man runs a network." Denise didn't cry this time. She felt rage. Cold. Sharp. Focused. "I don't care if he's got a network or an army," she said. "I want my daughter back." The hardest part about finding the truth was realizing no one had ever looked for it in the first place. Raymond Keller wasn't hiding. He'd lived in plain sight for years, paying his taxes, trimming his hedges, smiling at neighbors. There were no disguises, no aliases, just confidence. That dangerous, bone-deep confidence of a man who knew the system wouldn't touch him. Because why would it? He was a former social worker, a man with credentials, a trusted figure who'd spent decades visiting broken homes and filing reports no one double-checked. When families protested or made noise, they were labeled unstable, angry, uncooperative. And Raymond? He kept slipping through the cracks he helped build. Trina Bell uncovered his movements piece by piece, tracing his relocations like footprints in fresh snow. After early retirement, he'd floated between Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri. Always alone, always just outside the spotlight. He never stayed in one place for more than 3 years. But in each location, there was a pattern. Underfunded schools, underprotected children, missing girls. Trina's voice cracked over the phone. "I think he's been collecting them, Denise. Plucking kids nobody fought for. Slipping them into illegal labor sites. It's not just Amira." Denise's knuckles whitened as she gripped the phone. "I told them. I told the police 10 years ago. I told them about the man in the navy blue suit. But I was just a mother. A black mother. So they ignored me." Marcus was sitting beside her when she hung up. He didn't say anything. He just laid a hand on her shoulder. That night, Denise didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at that blurry Google Maps screenshot until her eyes burned. The next morning, Trina went public. She released a 2-part episode of her podcast titled The Man in the Suit. It laid out everything. Denise's story, the Google image, the complaints against Raymond Keller, and the missing girls from other counties. She posted the Street View screenshot with Amira circled in red. It went viral in hours. People who had never paid attention before suddenly wanted to know who Raymond Keller was. Local journalists swarmed his neighborhood. TikTok sleuths pulled old photos. Reddit threads tracked his past employment. The pressure mounted so quickly the state couldn't ignore it. Within 48 hours, law enforcement reopened Amira's case and raided Raymond Keller's house. Denise stood outside the police tape, her hands shaking, heart galloping so fast she thought she might collapse. Trina stood beside her with a recorder in hand, but she didn't speak. Not now. Not during this. Officers moved through the house like shadows. They came out with hard drives, binders, a file cabinet full of records with first names and dollar amounts. And finally a girl. Thin, pale, 17 at most. She didn't speak, didn't scream, just walked slowly, her eyes focused on the ground. They wrapped her in a blanket and led her into an ambulance. She wasn't Amira, but she was someone's child. Inside, they found a room with no windows, a mattress on the floor, a tray with half-eaten food. The walls were covered with printed chore schedules, each labeled with a girl's name. Most of them were fake. In a locked drawer, they found IDs. Dozens. Some real, some forged, all connected to children whose cases had long gone cold. In the master bedroom closet, folded carefully, was a yellow sweater. Denise nearly fell to her knees when she saw it. Raymond Keller was arrested on sight. He didn't resist, didn't ask questions, just buttoned his Navy suit and walked into the back of the patrol car like it was routine. Like he'd done this before. At the precinct, he lawyered up instantly. But it was too late. They had enough evidence to bury him. But still, no Amira. Not yet. Trina helped push the story national. CNN picked it up. The FBI got involved. The other rescued girl, 16 years old, finally spoke after 2 days in care. She said there was another girl who cleaned the kitchens in a laundromat 2 towns over. Her name's Ellie, she whispered. But she's sad. She never talks. She works every day like a machine. Denise didn't breathe again until officers stormed that laundromat. And there she was, in the back, hunched over a mop bucket, her hair in long braids that hung lifelessly around her face. Her wrists were raw. Her clothes were stained. And on her back, the yellow sweater. 10 years later, Denise ran toward her, but the officers stopped her. Let her process it, they said. She may not recognize you. Denise stood frozen, watching through the glass as Amira turned around slowly. Her eyes weren't angry, just blank, hollowed out, like a girl who'd forgotten what freedom felt like. Do you know who this is? A social worker asked gently. Amira looked through the glass at Denise, tilted her head slightly. No, she said. I've never seen her before. Denise's breath caught in her throat. She placed her hand on the glass. It's me, baby, she whispered. It's Mommy. Amira blinked. My name is Ellie. No, Denise said, tears falling now. That's what he told you. But it's not your name. Your name is Amira. You used to love banana pudding. You made me sing to you during thunderstorms. I used to brush your hair every night before bed. Amira didn't respond. Denise stayed at the hospital for 3 days, never leaving the hallway outside Amira's room. Nurses brought her coffee. Trina brought her blankets. Marcus brought her silence. On the 4th morning, a nurse tapped Denise's shoulder. She's asking for the woman with the yellow sweater. Denise stepped into the room. Amira didn't cry, but she didn't look away either. The room was too quiet. Hospitals had their own sound. The slow beep of monitors, the hiss of air vents, the shuffle of rubber soles on tile. But in Amira's room, it was as if everything held its breath. Denise stepped inside slowly, her hands trembling. Amira was sitting on the edge of the bed, knees pulled to her chest, her body wrapped in a loose hospital gown. The yellow sweater, filthy, stretched, frayed at the sleeves, lay folded neatly on the windowsill, like it had been handled by someone who both hated and needed it. Denise didn't speak at first. She sat down in the plastic chair by the bed, not too close. Not yet. She studied her daughter's face, now longer, harder. 17. But her eyes, they looked older. Eyes that had seen things no child should see. Amira didn't look at her. After a while, Denise whispered, "You asked for me." "I asked for the woman with the yellow sweater," Amira replied without turning. Her voice was flat, small, like someone reading lines from a forgotten play. "That's me," Denise said gently. "I'm your mother, baby." Amira looked out the window. "No, my mother's name was Denise. She died when I was 6. That's what he told me." Denise's stomach twisted. She had imagined this moment for 10 years. Dreamed of the hug, the recognition, the running into her arms. But she hadn't prepared for this. "He lied to you," she said. "He told you I gave up. But I didn't. I never stopped. I looked for you every single day." Amira finally turned her head just slightly. Her eyes were unreadable. "Then why didn't you find me?" The question hit like a gunshot. Denise swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "Because the people who were supposed to help me didn't. Because they looked at me and saw someone not worth listening to. Because he knew how to hide you. He was trained to hide kids like you." Amira looked down at her hands. They were thin, calloused. She picked at the skin near her thumb until it bled. "He said I had to work because no one else wanted me. That families are expensive. That I was lucky he kept me." Denise stood slowly, moving toward the edge of the bed, crouching to her daughter's level. "You were never a burden. You were my child. He took you because he knew you were loved and no one would believe me. He took you because he's evil. But I never stopped believing you were alive." Amira blinked. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. "I used to dream about a song," she said. "It played when I was scared. I think you used to sing it. Before the dark room. Before the kitchens." Denise smiled faintly. "You're my sunshine," she sang softly. "My only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." Amira stared at her for a long moment. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "I'm not the same," she whispered finally. "I don't remember who I was." "You don't have to remember everything," Denise said, tears falling freely now. "I remember enough for both of us. We'll build new memories. We'll go slow. I'm not going anywhere." They sat in silence again, the kind that hurt less than it used to. Over the next few days, Amira spoke more. In short bursts, hesitant fragments. She remembered a red bicycle, a favorite cereal, a broken necklace shaped like a moon. Denise brought each thing to her, one by one. The cereal box. The bike, still stored in Marcus's garage. The necklace she had worn every day for a year. It was like building a house from rubble. Brick by brick, memory by memory. But the cracks were deep. Amira flinched at loud noises. She never turned her back to a door. She folded her clothes in perfect lines, as if mistakes might get her punished. When a nurse raised her voice in the hallway one afternoon, Amira froze mid-sentence, her eyes going blank. Denise sat with her for an hour afterward, just holding her hand. Raymond Keller's trial began within weeks. The prosecutors found enough evidence to charge him with multiple counts of abduction, unlawful imprisonment, labor trafficking, and endangerment of minors. But Denise didn't care about the charges. She only cared about facing him. She needed him to see that Amira was not broken, that she was not invisible. Amira didn't want to testify. She said she wasn't ready. Denise didn't push her. The day of sentencing, Denise stood in front of the courtroom, her hands gripping the wooden rail like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "He stole more than my child," she said. "He stole her name, her memories, her voice. He made her believe she was nothing. That love was conditional. That survival was silence." She looked directly at Raymond, who sat with the same smug expression he wore the day he was arrested. Still in a navy blue suit. Still thinking he had control. "But she's here," Denise continued. "And I'm here. And every time she wakes up and breathes free air, you lose." Raymond was sentenced to 42 years without parole. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. Cameras flashed. But Denise ignored them all. She turned to find Amira sitting on the front steps, arms wrapped around her knees. Watching. Waiting. Denise approached slowly. "He's gone," she said. "It's over." Amira didn't say anything. Then suddenly, she stood. And for the first time in 10 years, she stepped forward, wrapped her arms around her mother, and sobbed. Not a quiet cry. A violent, shaking wail from the bottom of her lungs. The sound of years stolen. The sound of a little girl who had been silent too long. Denise held her tight. "I've got you," she whispered. "You don't ever have to go back." They stayed like that for a long time, and the yellow sweater, still folded under her arm, glowed like a memory that refused to die. Amira didn't speak for days after the sentencing. Not about what happened. Not about what she remembered. Not even about the man who had taken everything from her. She simply existed, breathing, blinking, sitting at the window with her knees pulled to her chest and the yellow sweater folded beside her like a relic. Denise didn't push. She had learned in the hardest way possible that love wasn't loud. It was patient. It sat in silence with you. It held your hand without asking questions. It whispered, "I'm here," even when your memories screamed otherwise. They moved into Marcus's spare room. It wasn't big, but Denise made it feel like home. She painted the walls lavender because it had once been Amira's favorite color. She bought a small bed and lined it with stuffed animals. Amira didn't touch them at first. She just stared at them like they were artifacts from a past she wasn't sure belonged to her. The nightmares came quickly. Every night, Amira woke up in a sweat, gasping for air, her fingers clawing at the sheets. She never screamed, just thrashed, wild, broken movements like she was still trapped in that basement, still mopping floors, still being told she was unwanted. Denise would sit beside her, rubbing circles on her back, whispering over and over, "You're safe. You're home. You're mine." Some nights, Amira fell asleep in her arms, her face pressed against Denise's chest like she was 6 again. Other nights, she stayed awake until sunrise, staring at the ceiling, refusing to blink. The therapist called it complex trauma, so it would take years, maybe forever. That memories might never fully return. That Amira might never be herself again. Denise didn't care. She didn't want the version of Amira who had disappeared. She just wanted the girl in front of her, bruised, quiet, trying. They went for walks in the park. Amira didn't like crowds, so Denise picked empty trails, the kind with trees and benches and birds she could name. Denise pointed out squirrels, made jokes, offered snacks. Sometimes Amira would smile, just a flicker. Other times, she walked silently, like a ghost still learning how to fill her own shoes. One afternoon, as they sat on a bench under a pine tree, Denise handed her a faded photo. It was of Amira at 5, sitting on a swing, mouth wide, open in mid-laugh, the yellow sweater stretched over her knees. "That was a good day," Denise said softly. Amira stared at the picture. Her eyes traced the lines, the colors, the smile. "I remember that swing," she whispered. Denise didn't cry. Not then. But something bloomed in her chest like light cracking through a boarded window. The memories came back slowly. Not all at once. Not in full. But in fragments, banana pudding at Thanksgiving, a blue bicycle, a song about sunshine, the smell of Mama's shampoo. Denise caught each one like a firefly and held it close. But not everything came back. Some things were gone. Erased. And Denise had to make peace with that. Amira refused to go back to school. She said classrooms made her feel like she was being watched. Denise homeschooled her instead. They read books at the kitchen table, did math on the living room floor, watched documentaries with the volume low. Sometimes, Marcus would join and ask silly questions just to make her laugh. They planted flowers in the front yard. Amira liked tulips. She knelt in the dirt for hours, fingers stained brown, her face flushed from the sun. "This feels real," she said one day. Denise looked up. "What is this?" Amira replied. "This life, this feeling." Denise knelt beside her, digging gently. "It is real." Amira nodded, but her eyes still searched the sky, like she didn't quite believe it yet. One morning, Denise found her sitting in the hallway, staring at the yellow sweater folded neatly on her lap. "I don't want to wear it," Amira said. "You don't have to," Denise replied. "I want to keep it, but I don't want it to touch me." "Is that weird?" "No," Denise said, kneeling. "That's not weird at all." They folded it together, wrapped it in tissue paper, and placed it in a box. Amira labeled it, "Proof I Survived." A few weeks later, a journalist called. They wanted to do a special on Amira's return. "A miracle story," they said. "We want to show people how hope wins." Denise declined. This wasn't a miracle. This wasn't hope. This was war. And her daughter was a soldier who had been captured, used, erased, and still found her way back. No one deserved to wrap that in a pretty bow. At Raymond Keller's second sentencing hearing, this time for federal labor trafficking charges, Denise stood beside Amira outside the courthouse. She wasn't testifying, just watching. As the judge listed off the years, 40 more tacked onto the 42, Amira stayed silent. But Denise saw her hand slowly curl into a fist. Not in fear, in defiance. Later that night, as they sat on the couch watching a baking show, Amira turned to her. "He'll die in there, won't he?" "Yes," Denise answered. "Good." Then, finally, Amira reached out, laid her head on her mother's shoulder, and whispered, "I'm tired of running from what happened. I'm ready to remember who I am." Denise kissed her forehead. "You already are, baby. One breath at a time." And for the first time in 10 years, they watched the sunset together. No yellow sweater. No missing posters. No screaming into silence. Just mother and daughter. Healing. Alive. Together.